Hi, this is Brad Hunt at Smooth Fusion, and in this video I'm going to be talking about personalization of content on Sitefinity using HubSpot. By way of introduction, Sitefinity 13.1 has been released and it's got some great new features. One of those features is the ability to personalize content based on HubSpot contact data or lead scores. And in this video series, I'm going to demonstrate the new functionality, starting with basically an empty Sitefinity 13.1 website, connecting to HubSpot, and personalizing data. And to do that, I need a few components. The first, of course, is Sitefinity 13.1. Then we're going to be using HubSpot, and I've just signed up for the free edition for this demo. And then lastly, we're going to use Sitefinity Insight to gain some insight into the personalization and reports on personalization. So this is going to be a three-part video series. The first part is connecting Sitefinity to HubSpot. Part 2 will be configuring personalization inside of Sitefinity. And part 3 is configuring Sitefinity Insight. So when we think about personalization in the context of Sitefinity, we typically think about running some sort of campaign or experiment. So we want to target some kind of specific content to a specific segment of users. We want to measure results and then repeat that process. And we want to see if we've altered user behavior, if we've led to more conversion, something like that. But it's basically a process of experimentation where you're targeting specific content to a specific set of users. So for this video series, I wanted to come up with something that's reasonably a real-world example. So the example campaign we'll be using might be one that we would run here at Smooth Fusion. So to start, we know that Sitefinity has been around for quite a long time, and older versions of Sitefinity are no longer supported. In fact, Sitefinity does have a Sitefinity lifecycle policy, and they've got a web page about that. And when we look at the supported and retired version schedule, we can see, of course, that all the older versions, 3.7 up to version 7, have already officially been retired and no longer receive support. And in December of this year, Sitefinity 8 will join that group as well. So there's a number of versions that are no longer supported. Customers on old versions need to upgrade. And the reasons for this are many, including security improvements, performance improvements, new functionality, and so on. So it's in their best interest to upgrade. And Smooth Fusion offers upgrade services, and so we want to try to persuade people to upgrade their older versions of Sitefinity. So what we want to do is customize our homepage with some special content for users on older, non-supported versions of Sitefinity. And we want to drive those users to request our upgrade services. And so in this example, this could be an example of a homepage that is for the default segment that everybody would see. And if you are a user that's on an older version of Sitefinity, then we want to add some content to the homepage. Specifically, we want to add this section that's just kind of right above the fold that tells people about our Sitefinity upgrade service and lets them know that their version may be expired. So that's what we're going to achieve in this video series. You can, of course, tailor this example to your own needs, but we are going to be personalizing content on the homepage of a site based on a contact property in HubSpot. So let's get started with that. So jumping back to the browser, the first thing I want to show you is our web page. I'm just running Sitefinity 13.1 locally. All I've got is a single home page just with some basic content that I've copied from our main Smooth Fusion website. And I did copy over the resource package so that I could have some styles, and so it was nicer looking than just an empty site. But effectively, when we look in the pages tree, there's only one page, and it is the home page that you just saw in the browser. And that's all we've got. We don't have any other forms or anything else going on. And then I've also signed up for a new, like I said, a free edition of HubSpot. I don't have any contacts in here yet. I don't have anything else going on. It's basically just a brand new empty HubSpot site. So the first thing that we want to do in this video series is we're going to connect Sitefinity to HubSpot so that we can start recording data. And that process starts by going under Administration, Connector for HubSpot. And my HubSpot ID is here because I've done this before. When you first come to this screen, that won't be there. So you're going to be prompted to enter your HubSpot ID and your API key. So let's see where we find those in HubSpot. So the HubSpot ID you can find up under your profile information. Mine is 8391565, 8391565. And then to find the API key, you can go under your profile and preferences. On the left, go to integrations and API key. And you probably won't have one there when you come the first time, but you just click on create an API key. And then you can copy that API key from here to your clipboard. Go back over to Sitefinity and paste the API key. And now it's connected. So that's what it should look like if your connection was successful. So the next thing we want to do is figure out how are we going to capture data in Sitefinity and send it over to HubSpot. And for that, we actually need to go and create a form inside of HubSpot, which might not be intuitive at first, but you're basically connecting a form from Sitefinity to a form in HubSpot. And so to do that, even on the free version, you can come under Marketing and Forms. And we're going to create a free form. This part doesn't really matter because we're not going to be using the interface of HubSpot to present the form. So I'll just choose Embedded Form. And you have some templates to start with, or you can start with a blank template. I'll just choose the Contact Us form because that's basically what we're going to be building. And then we can start to customize that. So we want to keep first name, so we'll drag that first. The order here, again, doesn't really matter because we're not using this for presentation. But we've got first name, last name, email, and message, and we can use those same 4 form fields in our system. So we'll just keep those and we'll publish this form. And the other thing we probably want to do is go ahead and change the name of this form. We'll just call it Contact. So now we should have a contact form in our list, and it's published and ready to go. So now we go back to Sitefinity, and under Content, go to Forms. And we're basically going to recreate that same form inside of Sitefinity. So we'll call it a contact form here. The names don't have to match, but just to make it easier later when we have more than one form. And then if you've used forms before, it's just a familiar editing experience similar to how you create pages. So I'm just going to create a few text boxes. We'll use one for first name, one for last name. We'll use the email field for email, and then we'll use the paragraph for message or comments. And then we'll quickly come in here and give these a label. First, last. The email field by default already has the label of email. And then we'll make this last one say comments. And we could take the time to make these required or add any other kind of validation, but for this purpose, all we need to do is create the form, make sure the form fields are there. We're going to publish that form. And then to connect this form over to the existing HubSpot form, we need to take another step, and that's under Actions, Properties. And if we expand this section called Send Form Data to External Applications, we're going to come back and talk about Insight in a minute. So I'm not going to send that to Insight yet, but we are going to send this to HubSpot. And if you click in this field, it should start to use the API key that we entered and make API calls to HubSpot. So as you start to type, you can see that it figured out there was a form called Contact over in HubSpot. So I'm going to choose that contact form that we created. And this next step is important. You need to make sure to create the data mapping. So what you're doing is you're mapping form fields from your local Sitefinity form to the HubSpot form. And again, using the API, it's going to pull in the values from that contact form that we created in HubSpot already. So first will be mapped to first name, last will be mapped to last name, email to email, and we called it comments and they called it message in HubSpot, but that's fine. We can map those form fields. So now we have 4 form fields mapped. We're sending the data to HubSpot, and we can save our changes. The next thing we need to do is actually build a content page to host that form. So I'm going to go over to Pages, create a page. We'll call it Contact. I've got a custom template that we're using called main. And for this custom template, we have a custom hero. So we'll use the custom hero image. And this just has a custom widget designer that we've built. So I'll choose a background image from our library here. Use this one. And the header will just be contact us, something like that. We're not going to have a call to action. Our subheader could be, contact us for more information, something like that. So now we've got the hero, and we want to drag a form widget on the page. But before we do that, what I want to do is go over to the layout, because we've got some containers and stuff we want to add. So I'm going to add a container onto the page, and then we've got some other things if we wanted to use those layouts, but just all I need is a container. So now I'm going to drag the form widget, and I will select the form contact that we created. And an important step that you need not to forget here is you always need to make sure to go in and edit and go into the widget designer and make sure that you are selecting this option for posting data to HubSpot. If you don't do this, it's not going to send the data to the form that you've created in HubSpot, so that's an important thing to do. So I'm going to save that. Then I'm going to publish this page. Now that the page has been successfully published, I can go back to my site, refresh, and I'll have the contact form on the new contact page. Here it is. And so it picked up the styles that we already had in our resource package. So remember, over here in HubSpot, if I go back here and go to contacts, we currently don't have any contacts in the system. And so for this contact, I'll just put my own name. So Brad Hunt, bhunt@smoothfusion.com, desktop comments. And of course, I didn't do anything for any kind of custom confirmation, so that's just the default there. And if we go over and look in contacts now, if we've wired everything up correctly, it looks like we have. Now we have a new contact that is in HubSpot. And it should have our contact properties, at least the ones that were from the form. So we've got first name, last name, email, and you can kind of see that there was a form submission. Now here's something interesting. You see that there's a form submission from my local host, which we expected because that's the URL that I'm running locally. But we also have this unidentified form. So let's go back under marketing forms. And what we see now is that we have the contact form that we created, but we also have this unidentified form. And the first thing is under contact, even though this says 0, let me click on this 0, and we should see that submission. So that's the submission for the one that I just made off the local host. So what is this one? This unidentified form, when we click on it, it tells us that it's an HTML form that wasn't created in HubSpot. And so basically, I think what's happened here is HubSpot has identified this contact form, and it's basically done 2 submissions. So it's captured this based on the Sitefinity HubSpot connector, but it's also captured my data just because HubSpot by default is capturing any form posts and sending those over to HubSpot. So what we need to do over in HubSpot is we can turn off that functionality. We can go to the settings, and where it says collect website form data, turn automatic collection of form data on non-HubSpot forms here. So I want to turn that off so that now whenever the form submissions come in, you won't have that extra form submission, and it will just be the one. And then we can actually go back to forms, and we can delete this unidentified form, and that should take care of that problem. So we now have a form in Sitefinity that's connected to a form in HubSpot. We saw the data is now in HubSpot, and we should also see that same data in our form section and look at the responses. We should be able to see the response there as well. So in this video, we've seen how to start with a basically empty Sitefinity 13.1, connect it to HubSpot by adding the HubSpot ID and the API key, creating a form inside of HubSpot, and connecting that form by mapping fields from a Sitefinity form over to a HubSpot form. So that concludes the first video, and in part 2, we will start looking at personalization.